Welcome, everybody, to the Only Podcast. My name is Chris Giannini, your host, and I'm joined, as always, by theonlycolors.com co-managing editor Austin Smith. And we are recording this podcast as a follow-up reaction to the sexual assault charges and dismissals of several Michigan State football players, which we had mentioned as this investigation had been going on all spring that we were going to generally hold off our thoughts and talk about it too much until there were details, until there were names, until there was something to really talk about. And that time has come. On Tuesday, Josh King charged with one count of first-degree criminal sexual conduct, one count of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, as well as capturing an image of an unclothed person and faces up to life in prison. Donnie Corley and Demetric Vance, both charged with third-degree criminal sexual conduct and face up to 15 years in prison if convicted. All three were immediately kicked off the football team once those charges were announced. And over the last 2 days of information, there's a lot of to unpack and react to. Austin, we'll get into the details of things in a minute, but as this kind of played out the last couple of days, what was your kind of initial thoughts on what's going on?
Well, obviously, thoughts on just the situation in general is it's a terrible situation. It's awful that this happened to the young woman who is obviously the victim of all of this. And I think first and foremost, beyond the effect on a football team or on these young men who committed these crimes, I think the first thing allegedly committed these crimes. I think the first thing that always pops into my mind is that I feel for the alleged victim in this case. Her well-being is paramount in all of this. But it's tough. It's a huge black eye on a program that has, as you're going to get into in just a minute, has had its fair share of, issues in the past, and even under, the watchful eye of Mark D'Antonio has had some things happen that other programs haven't, and it's disappointing, it's disheartening, and yeah, all in all, it's just a bad look for every single person and involved.
Yeah, and this latest news came on top of, which we already knew, Austin Robertson had been charged with sexual assault and had been kicked off the team, and then a story I think broken by the Free Press that back in 2015 and then 2016, I think Keith Mumphrey was expelled from school after a Title IX investigation into a similar thing, although there were no charges there. So multiple incidents on top of each other. And exactly, I mean, the first thoughts for everything go to the alleged victim. And I saw some people kind of reacting to the news, in terms of how D'Antonio handled it, as he should have, and MSU's reaction was generally seemed to be the proper way to handle it. Some people saying, this is, the best case scenario for MSU or the best news for MSU. But I think that's just a terrible, terrible way to look at it, because then you're kind of just talking about a brand or an image of a football team over serious stuff that happened. And, I wanted to, on this podcast, read out loud some of the specific allegations or testimony to kind of get a real sense of what exactly this was. Because a lot of times you'll just hear sexual assault in the headline, or sometimes details won't be there, or they're too disturbing to hear, and you kind of brush over it. And Baylor's Matt Rhule the new Baylor coach, Matt Rhule, had a comment a couple weeks ago that he doesn't like when people talking about sexual assault that says, as a father, I have daughters, or I have a wife, and I understand the blah, blah, blah. Because then he said that's separating the difference between women you know and women you don't know. and treating them differently. So I just wanted to, I'll just read from the Free Press article here. A detective Chad Davis of the MSU Police Department testified Tuesday, and some of the things that he listed or that he had said were that King penetrated the alleged victim in a room, and then Corley and Vance came into the bathroom later at separate times, and the alleged victim was forced to perform oral sex on them. And the Davis said, quote, "The victim said she eventually collapsed to the floor, and all three suspects left the bathroom promptly." Police have also apparently discovered a video on King's cell phone of him having sex with the woman. The woman did not know about it, was not aware, and did not consent to it. And there was a text message thread between the three players and a fourth unidentified player that would indicate their involvement in it. So based on the evidence that they laid out, I'm not a lawyer, but it obviously does not appear to be the evidence appears to be a lot of it, because considering how long this investigation took, I think that was probably part of the reason to gather all the evidence that they had. Just disturbing stuff. And when you see stuff like King facing up to life in prison, Vance and Corley up to 15 years in prison, you can understand why. This is it's a big deal. It's a big problem on a lot of college campuses. MSU has been one of, I believe, hundreds of schools that have been investigated for how it treats Title IX situations, and just some really horrific stuff. And I guess you only hope that whatever comes out of this, that justice is properly served. Austin, did you have any kind of reaction when you started when they released the details of everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty horrific, to hear it spelled out and to see, because coming into this whole thing really until today when they released it, or I believe maybe it was late yesterday, we didn't know the details. There are rumors as to who the players are, as to what happened, as to who was told, and things of that nature. But just to hear it fleshed out, and in the back of your mind, you're hoping that these terrible things you're hearing aren't true, but to hear it spelled out and just put there in black and white on the page it's tough. It's hard to hear just as a person, like you said. I think Matt Rule had the point he made was great. There is no separation between people you know and people you don't. I mean, these are people. Everyone's, it's a person at the end of the day. And, I think it really does bring to light just how big of a problem this is, and how justice does need to be served. Like, it doesn't matter who these people are. It doesn't matter how many stars were next to their name, what position they play, or anything. That doesn't matter that they're even involved in the game of football or anything. They need to be, if the allegations are true and if this testimony is true, they need to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. I understand they're kids, and everybody makes mistakes, but you need to be held accountable. And I think that was one of the things that's troubling about this. And I don't want to jump ahead too much on the conversation here, but the lack of accountability beyond even just this investigation between the Robertson thing, some of the other departures from the football team, Curtis Blackwell's involvement, it just speaks to a really a systemic gap and void in accountability. And I think, you saw it on the field last year with the lack of senior leadership, and then it really manifested itself in this offseason off the field, which is far worse. And that's troubling. That's really troubling. It's not something you would ever have expected from a Mark D'Antonio program and from a Mark Hollis-led athletic program. I mean, these are two responsible, well-spoken, good, from all we can tell, really just genuinely good people. And to have this happen on their watch is disheartening and a bit scary. So, yeah, it's a pretty loaded situation. And really the things at Michigan State right now, I think with all this coming out, you've pretty much reached a rock bottom. So it's it's troubling to see. Certainly all of the, rumors and whatnot are gone, and now it's cold hard facts. And it's a tough pill to swallow as a supporter and an alumni.
You mentioned that, they're kids, or, 19, 20 years old, kids, adults, whatever the law says. But I think the bigger point is that sexual assault needs to be viewed as a much, much more serious crime than it often has been
Absolutely.
in the past. No, I'm not going to equate things here, but I'm not going to go down this road. But it needs to. It's a very, very serious crime, and kids who get to college, kids who are these players were freshmen. A lot of stuff gets thrown at them. They need to understand just how serious this is. And D'Antonio said that this, I believe, had come right after a week after they had a team meeting on this type of topic and Title IX and stuff like that, which makes you really question if the message is getting through there.
Right.
So, life in prison, 15 years in prison, this is serious stuff. And kids, young players, high school, college, they need to know this, because sexual assault is a huge issue on college campuses across the country right now. And it can, affect anywhere and everywhere. So how things played out, an independent report commissioned by the school said that a player helped the woman, was friends with her, and started to tell D'Antonio something. D'Antonio stopped the story says D'Antonio stopped the player and immediately contacted the Office of Institutional Equity. And over the course of a handful of minutes, D'Antonio and the office spoke on this issue, explained what had happened, what he'd been told, back and forth, stuff like that. And it sounds like a couple days later, the police got involved. And so the school's report says that D'Antonio acted as he should. Mark Hollis acted like he should. This wasn't a situation. Basically, what I took away from that report was that this wasn't a Baylor where you had all sorts of coaches going, hiding stuff, talking to witnesses, all sorts of stuff. Now, Curtis Blackwell was let go as due to his involvement in this, without totally saying what had happened. He according to the thing, he quote, to determine what had occurred, communicated with the parents of one of those players regarding the incident, did not report any of the information to the office or to MSU. Appears to have kind of tried to do some things on his own, and he was let go because that's not how you handle those things. So now I know people are like, prodded in. People are saying they're prodded in, and this is commending him to an extent, which, to an extent, that's it's fine. But all he did was he did his job. He did what was required of him. Yes, it's good that he didn't turn it into a massive cover-up, but this still happened under his watch. What's your kind of reaction to what the report said, how D'Antonio handled this, and how the rest of the school handled this?
Yeah, I have trouble saying I'm proud of him or spinning this into anything positive, frankly. What I'd say is that it's not pride. I guess if anything, there is just a bit of relief that when he knew of a problem, that he followed protocol, that he alerted the correct parties in a timely fashion and did everything correctly once the problem was identified. I think, I'm not going to say that I'm proud of him because, like you just said, he did his job. He did his response. He followed through on what he is supposed to do. Now, I guess, like you said, you can make the case that it's not a Baylor situation, but giving a head football coach who's charged with, helping shape the lives of 100+ kids every single year, giving him credit for not, applauding him for not covering up a massive sexual assault scandal that's not something you should be patting him on the back for. That's something that should be expected of him. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm proud of the way he's handling it, because I'm not. I'm relieved. if anything, that he handled it the way he did, because he did do the right things and did it in, like I said, a timely fashion. But what troubles me is that this isn't the first big thing to happen in this offseason. There are multiple other incidents that have taken place.
I think we kind of forget that the Austin Robertson thing happened after we knew this investigation was going on.
After
everybody knew what it.
And that's even it. Like the timing and all of these other things to have taken place. Like, again, I don't want to sit here and pat Mark D'Antonio on the back for doing his job, because other things have gone wrong, and it speaks to a void in accountability. And the fact that Austin Robertson's gone, there have been notable locker room rifts. You had John Reschke doing some terrible things earlier in the year. Like, yeah, he can't babysit these guys. He can't be there all the time. But what Mark D'Antonio did so well for a long time, like, yes, he's had his incidents, especially early on in his time at Michigan State, but he did for a solid portion of time there really establish a culture where players felt accountable. They felt like you didn't hear about these many of them anyway, like off the field things taking place. And now, he brought in a star-studded 2016 class and lost his watchdog, I think, in a lot of ways, in Pat Narduzzi. And, the wheels kind of spun off a little bit. You had some guys feeling entitled. You didn't have the upperclassman or the bad guy defensive coordinator to yell at them and keep them in their place. And then things like this happen. Now, it's hard to replace a guy like Pat Narduzzi. It's hard to fill that personality void. I understand that, but I'm not in those locker rooms every day, and neither are you. But there had to be something that could have been done previously to help, alleviate some of this stuff. Maybe some of it's on Blackwell. You had heard some connection. It's funny because Blackwell, I don't believe, was fired strictly because of this incident.
D'Antonio said that there had been some philosophical differences in recent months.
So I'm thinking, and you've heard rumblings here and there, if you're paying attention, that maybe he wasn't his title was the director of college performance and advancement. Yeah. Now, if you've got, and his connections were mostly with the Detroit area, where several of these guys have come from, and he was involved heavily in a lot of these recruitments. If he's not following through on his end of the bargain, maybe D'Antonio put too much trust into him or somebody else. Again, I guess I'm speculating a bit here, but there's a lack of accountability, and eventually that falls on the head coach. But it seems like there are some systemic breakdowns within the team, and the best way to take care of that is to flush out. Record be damned. You need to flush out some of the riffraff and get back to building your team based on building your program, and just building your school based on high character people.
Four players from the 2016 football recruiting class, which was MSU's, most people say it was their highest ranked class. Four of the top players from that class are now kicked off the team and facing sexual assault charges. The three and Robertson. And, as that talent pool got deeper, did it cloud evaluations of players, or was there more pressure to take chances on guys because of Penn State and Michigan? I can't speak to any of that, but they've had problems with guys who they've recruited in the past who have been arrested or had things go on while they were being recruited, and either MSU stuck with some of them, like Delton Williams. They pulled the plug on other ones. You have weird situations like the Jay Harris deal. So they've always kind of had some character problems in some of these recruiting classes, and guys who are maybe questionable academically, who are right on the borderline. And with MSU not being one of those top recruiting schools, it's just kind of how they've done things, and probably taken more risks on players than some other schools have. And when you do that and you don't have accountability in place, bad stuff ends up happening.
Yeah, and the biggest case, the one that really puts a black eye on Mark D'Antonio is Austin Robertson. I think more than any of the three that were just charged today or yesterday. As far as I understand, it didn't come into Michigan State with any legal looming issues, but Robertson had already, been charged with, I think, misdemeanor sexual assault or something along those lines before he even came in. I believe
it was inappropriate touching of a female or something.
Yeah, that was it. So, they had to put him in the diversionary program like right before he even stepped foot on campus. So that's one that you look at specifically that just looks really bad. And then as soon as he got out of that program, like 2 weeks later, he, this second incident happened, and he is now thus off the team, and in some serious legal trouble. So that's the one that looks bad. And it also, these things are all happening. And then on signing day, Donovan Winter, their recruit, the defensive end out of Florida, he got arrested. And, you're right. I think Michigan State has taken some risks on some kids because they see high upside, and maybe they know they've got to keep up with some of the big boys. And I also think that they were tempted by talent. They were in a position for this 2016 class coming off 3 straight Big Ten titles, coming off a college football, playoff appearance. They had the chance to land some big fish, and whether they knew about some of these looming issues or not, they went after some guys that, because of talent alone, maybe they didn't do as thorough a job of vetting. But I think you'll see I think you're already honestly seeing a major change in that in this 2017 class already. I think they've talked about it before, and I know you'll hear it again, time and time again from D'Antonio, that they're concentrating back on high character guys. I think they might take a step back in the talent pool a little bit just to get people that represent the school the way they want it to. You can't avoid trouble. Trouble is going to find every single program one way or the other, but not this kind of trouble. You can avoid this kind of trouble, and hopefully, a fundamental change will help them do that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a large chunk of these coaches here for a long time. D'Antonio's been here for a decade. You had Kirk Cousins and other senior leadership guys put that in there, but it fell off over the previous 5-6 years. It had generally been on track.
Yep.
A couple of incidents here and there, but then everything has come crashing down. And the coaches handled it the right way, other than Blackwell. But again, you have to do character evaluations when it comes in recruiting. It's just how it goes now. And I'm unrelated. I'm kind of curious how that will affect early signing period if teams who maybe already put out offers end up doing it. But head coaches aren't allowed to go out on the road during the spring now, and so the amount of time that you can talk with kids face to face in person. With parents, try to get everything. You try to as much as you can. It's not like an NFL team where you have, you can have private investigators check out players, go back to their third grade teachers and stuff like that. College coaches generally have to make decisions with not always a ton of information. Now, Austin Robertson was not that situation. They had information on it. It comes whether or not it's fair. A big chunk of that comes down to the coaches as well for bringing people. Bring the people in
and bring them to an unstable environment. You know what I mean? Like if these guys, I think with some, you like to think that if the Shalik Calhouns, Darian Harris's of the world are still around, really positive locker room influences, the Jack Allens, people like that, maybe they're able to avoid some of these situations, but
I don't know. I don't want to go too far down that and say Josh King doesn't allegedly.
No. I don't mean it like
someone
that.
Shirley Calhoun's there with him, but it's.
I'm just saying that they came into a major. It just goes back to the accountability. They came in at a bad time too.
There was a vacuum of leadership and accountability in the program that has been very clear over the past.
That's what I'm saying.
Year. So let's talk. Okay, so I assume that you are totally fine with them kicking all the players off the team.
Absolutely.
And they said before the criminal process results, but based on some of the evidence that they were listening, I think it's pretty clear why D'Antonio did what he did. Now, some of these other D'Antonio's had a checkered past when it comes to this stuff. A lot of rival fans will point it out. I think some cases that criticism is very fair, like the Glenn Winston situation. Chris L. Rucker playing right after getting out of jail as well. Those are situations which D'Antonio deserves to, I think, be lambasted for. There's other situations I think are a little bit different. Rather Hall, everybody who served jail time in that incident was off the team, whether they were officially kicked off or whether they, quote, transferred. Other than, I think, Fred Smith, who moved to fullback and I think later transferred anyway. McGarrett King's situation, there was one of them where I think he kicked up a parking truck. The Chris L. Rucker one, I remember, if I remember correctly, is he was going to be moving his he was drunk. He was going to be moving his car, accidentally hit someone. The person didn't want to do anything, but there was a cop there, so he got that. Denton Williams flashed a gun at somebody during a road rage thing, although the other person, I believe, wrote a letter saying that they hope, nothing.
Yeah, and then Dylan Williams D'Antonio did pull his scholarship for the next year, so it's not like he didn't do anything. And
Williams was, I believe, arrested or charged or something in high school with, I believe, a drug charge. I think Penn State backed off of him after that. MSU did not. He emphasized how grateful he was for that at the time. So that's another one, stuff coming in. So there's been situations with D'Antonio where he has not handled things properly. There have been situations, I think, that have been maybe overblown. I think this situation, he handled everything properly as he should have. I don't think anybody really thinks otherwise. He had said this is kind of a new situation for him. Some people were a little confused by that because of some stuff that had gone on with other programs, especially at MSU. But as far as I can recall, this, although, the Mumphrey thing now we know, but up until... But
didn't that happen after happened after he was graduated?
It did, but he was still, looked like I think he was on campus if it was in the spring and he was going for a graduate degree.
Yeah.
So, and I assume he was around. So
it's terrible no matter what. It doesn't really matter when it happened.
Right. And there were some MSU fans who jumped on Chris Solari for reporting that, which made no damn sense.
He's doing his job.
Right, and it paints a picture because now we know that this did happen before all these other incidents happened. So that it's something that was taken into account.
Truth isn't always fun. It's his job to report it, and I'm glad he did.
So culture of the program is obviously in a very, very bad place. We're not going to talk football, what it means, but you couple this with Josh Reschke leaving the team for saying things, Kenny Like leaving for what appears to be an academic reason. Makuza, the offensive lineman, just kind of straight up quitting football. Khalil Gaines has transferred. You've got 4 players kicked off the team for sexual assault. And it's in a bad place in all ways right now. And I don't even want to say how can it be fixed. I don't want to be too forward looking and look past what has just happened and what will continue to play out through trials and everything. But it's just a mess right now, and it's only going the way the program handles itself in society and in the community is only going to happen if there is accountability and leadership and just people doing the right things.
Yeah,
and
I think
will it? I can't say it's going. I don't want to say D'Antonio will get it fixed. Or here's a player that'll step up and make everybody better again. I'm not going to say anything like that. I don't know. It's clear there's a huge problem, and you wonder if everybody else realizes how big of a problem this is. I keep coming back to the Austin Robertson thing happening in the midst of everything that was already going on.
Yeah, that's just incredible. I don't think it's really hyperbole to say that this is the most pivotal, moment in D'Antonio's tenure, and just in terms of his program and in terms of what he stands for and how he'll be remembered as a coach. Because this can go, and again, like you said, I don't want to spin this forward. I don't, well, I mean, you have to spin it forward a little bit. We don't want to talk about football, but how he and the rest of this program and the leadership responds off the field will shape everything from here on out. I mean, now it's all out there. There's no more question, there's no more rumor, conjecture. He can actually speak on the matter because everything is out in the open now. So how he handles himself and the rest of the program, what they do in the community, and inside the walls of that locker room and what they're teaching these kids moving forward is everything. Because if you do it well, who knows what can happen. You'll get back on the right track, whatever. We'll get to that in football season. But if he doesn't respond to this the correct way, I mean, you drive Michigan State into you put a black mark on the school that is going to take this already is going to take a very long time to wash out of the public memory, and it shouldn't ever wash out. This is something you should remember forever.
Exactly.
And now it's there forever. So it's up to D'Antonio and everybody else to make sure that the public understands that they are taking this seriously. I think he's done that so far, but I mean, it can't just stop here. He has to play it forward. He has to make sure that every single young man that walks through that door on his watch is as educated as humanly possible, that he is maybe even the face moving forward of the anti-sexual assault, and he has to do everything humanly possible to, try and help the people who are affected by this type of thing. And they're in a really tough spot, and wherever he goes from here, in the very immediate future is going to have massive ramifications on his life, on the lives of the young men in his program, and on the program and the school in general. So,
and on the women on campus.
And absolutely, yes, as more important than anything else. So it's a big moment. I mean, this is a massive moment in the lives of many people. So it's not hyperbole to say that this is an absolutely just a pivotal moment for not only the athletics, but just the school in general. So, it's a intense moment, I think, is probably the best way to put it.
At the AFCA convention in January, Brenda Tracy, who was a former rape victim at Oregon State, spoke to the auditorium of coaches about sexual assault and how to stop it and how to, I guess, prevent it. I mean, in what it means and everything. And it made a huge impact on those coaches. Tracy eventually, before that, had spoken to the Nebraska team and spoken to Mike Riley. And now she has started to visit a lot of schools in the winter and the spring about sexual assault and making an impact. And she seems to be having a very big impact on a lot of people. I don't know if she specifically has spoken to MSU or if other people have, but I would hope that MSU D'Antonio would continue to, or at least would have, these types of people speak to the team.
Clearly, it needs to be taken more seriously, and I hope he does that moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess the school has assigned 3 administrators to oversee the program, which I think is a good move by Hollis. So just a real sad, horrific situation. We hope that can never happen again, that justice can be served, and that the victim can move forward in her life as best she can. And I know we're 2 men here talking about this issue, and I know that will obviously may not be the best way to handle it, but I just thought it was important that Austin and I speak on this topic, speak on this issue, not at all speak about how it affects football, because I think it's a very important thing. So I thank you guys for listening. Austin, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just hope that, like you said, justice is served, and that Michigan State can use this as an opportunity to educate and really up their activism to educate everybody and make sure that this type of thing never happens again. Be it doesn't matter if it involves athletics, just on the campus in general. I hope this is, people can be aware of just how big of a problem this is, and that they can take the right steps to educating people more and keeping it from happening.
Yeah, and so I don't know when we're going to talk football again. I
Maybe
would
the
hope
fall.
that people do, but I hope people do not forget or move past what is it cannot happen again, and it's a national problem across the country that really needs to be solved as best it can. So thank you everybody for listening. We will talk to you sometime later.